Chapter 26. Concessions. He heard her plain as day. Emma had been increasingly manic ever since the attack on Poland, but now she was unhinged. Margot's voice carried through Kent's closed door. "What do you mean, South America?" "That's where they found his tracker," Emma repeated. "Shane said—" "Of course Shane said," piped Jordan, clearly losing interest. "He cut out his tracker in China," Margot teamed. "It's a fluke." "Shane said the chances of an identical code matching Johnny's was in the trillions." Emma's voice was frantic. "Please, trust me, it's him. It's gotta be." There was a pause. Kent could imagine Margot staring at Jordan. "Screw off," she said, marching off the carpet to another side of the room. "Jordan, please," Emma begged. "Jordan, let's go," Margot commanded, the sound coming from near her bedroom. Another pause. "From Daniels," Jordan perked. "Really?" "It's Johnny," Emma swore. "His tracker doesn't just show up halfway around the world for no reason." "But what if it does?" he replied, demanding the very worst possibilities. "What if it's just that, his tracker? What if it has nothing to do with him? It's just some pin-sized sliver of metal. It could have wound up anywhere." "And turned itself back on?" "I think that's more likely than it being back in Johnny's skin for a split second," he rejected. "That's how they work, isn't it? They only work when plugged into a source." Emma was silent. Ken kept his ear to the door, his sense of curiosity bolting him to the spot. "Jordan, come on," Margot repeated. Jordan must have needed the last word. "I'm not trusting Daniels over a blip on the radar," he resonated. "If you think I'm going to— This is the only lead we have," Emma shouted, so loud Kent backed away from the door. "What do you want to do, sit here and cry about it the same way you've been doing with your mom for the last year? How close are they to finding her, Jordan? The only shred of evidence we have to your entire family has just been dropped in our laps, and you're choosing this moment to run away from it? You're a coward. Johnny would be ashamed of you. They would both be. Don't you dare manipulate him too," Margot bolted. "Margot, shut up," Jordan hissed. "I can stand up for myself." A heavy set of feet shifted over the common room floor. "You really think it's that easy?" he continued. "You really think you could just use them against me like that, so I'll side with you?" Ken could hear Emma take a deep breath before replying coolly. "It's the only lead we have." The room fell even quieter, broken after half a minute of silence by Jordan's voice. "Kent, come out here," he ordered. A shiver ran up Kent's spine as he instinctively backed away from the door. "He's been listening the entire time," Jordan explained to the others in an exhausted tone. He turned back to the doors. "Now, Kent." Taking a deep breath of his own, Kent opened the door and walked out boldly, doing everything he could not to show his embarrassment. "What?" he asked casually. Jordan didn't even look at him. His red eyes were glaring at the ground as he stated, "You're the deciding vote." "What?" Kent repeated, this time echoed by Margot. Jordan turned to her. "He knows what's going on. Kent, do you believe it or not?" Kent bit his tongue to stop a third "what" from escaping his mouth. Even without the question of confirmation, Jordan added, "Do you think it's worth chasing?" "Jordan!" Margot scowled, but he shot his hand out to silence her. "I'm abstaining," he continued. "Kent gets to decide." Jordan kept his eyes on the ground, a puzzled agony crossing over it as he waited for Kent to speak. Kent looked down to where Jordan was looking, but saw nothing but the static grain in the vinyl floor. The sudden realization that the girls were staring at him cascaded over his shoulders, making his entire body feel 10 times heavier. He could feel his heart rate flying into overdrive. Even then, his decision was easy. "I'm with Margot." A tense breath of relaxation settled through the room. Margot cracked a minimal smile. Jordan kept his eyes on the floor. Kent turned to Emma, whose blue eyes were hiding any resentment he expected to find. "I'm done putting my life at risk because of the things you want," he directed. "It could be all three of you plus Sander against me. I'd still say no." Again, he stopped himself from going further, almost letting Emma hear exactly how he felt about Johnny. His words caught in his throat as he noticed Jordan frozen in a trance, his eyes now swollen, his face as red as they had been only moments before. Margot noticed it too. "Jordan?" she repeated, concerned. He continued to stare at the floor, breathing heavily. Several seconds passed before, in a strained whisper, Jordan said, "Out." Kent's eyes darted to Emma, then Margot, who looked back with fearful confusion. "Leave," he ordered, still quiet. "Now!" He finally raised his head, and Kent took a step back toward his door. With gritted teeth, Jordan looked equally ready to either burst into tears or rip their throats out with his bare hands. "Both of you! I'm not going to—" Margot interjected. "I need to talk to her alone," he begged, struggling to keep his eyes from breaking. He gestured between Margot and Kent. "I need you both to leave." Again, Kent turned to Margot. A mix of anger, fear, and distrust met his gaze. "Please." The crack in Jordan's voice was enough to shake Margot from her stance. She shook her head angrily and shot Emma daggers as she towered past her to the front door. "Don't forget what I can do to you," she snarled, but Emma remained unshaken. Kent ignored her completely as he followed Margot out the front door. Outside, he found her bolting to the elevator and had to jog to keep up. "You're really just going to let her do that to him?" he scolded. "You know he's going to break because of Johnny." Margot punched the ground floor button and shrugged back against the wall as the doors closed. "Of course I know that," she sighed furiously. "But there's nothing I can do about it." "Nothing you can do about it," he relished. "Margot, you spent 2 months stopping her from doing exactly this. You're just going to give it up now?" Margot closed her eyes and sighed, twisting her face in a tight frustration that wasn't far from Jordan's. Her head rocked against the wall. "I can't do that to him," she mumbled. "You don't get it. Every day I have to compete with them. He's thinking about Johnny way more than he ever thinks about me. If he has hope that we're going to find him, I have to." Her voice broke off as her jaw clenched again, furious at her lack of control. She whipped out her claws on her right hand and spun around, swiping clean through the metal support railing at their waist height. Kent held his breath as she turned to him again, trying to calm herself. "I hate Emma," she cautioned. "I hate her for the way she is. I hate her for what she did to you. I hate her for what she's doing to him now." A tear fell from Margot's left eye. "But I love him more." A burning mix of anger and pity rose up through Kent's chest. "But what if it's nothing?" he shouted. "I heard the details the same as you. We have nothing beyond a split-second signal halfway around the world from where he disappeared. You're going to willingly risk your life, hell, Jordan's life, for a chance at finding Johnny again?" They hit the ground floor. As soon as the door opened, Margot rushed out toward the front doors, ignoring Kent's question completely. He rushed to follow. "You and I can fight against it," he encouraged desperately. "They need all 4 of us to agree to go. I'm not budging." He rushed in front of her to catch her eyes, carefully backpedaling around the decorative obstacles on their way. "I know you think you have to support him when he flips, but you and I can stand against her," he continued. "We have to stand against her." He stood his ground to stop her from leaving the building altogether, but Margot just brushed past and continued through the doors, out into the windy evening. "Where are we even going?" he shouted after her. Turning to the monorail station, she finally caught his eye and acknowledged him. "We're going to Xander's house." Xander lived down in Winchester, one of the town's southeastern neighborhoods built as part of the 90s population boom. Emma had talked his ear off without prompting the first time they had visited. It wasn't quite as affluent or pompous as Reeves Creek, but the cul-de-sac still painted a depressing picture of a new millennium capitalist hellscape. Every house, despite an attempt at individualism through siding and roof colors, was the exact same shape. Kent was reminded of a phrase his mother used every time he caught her watching renovation shows on their small living room television. It was the kind of development his father would consider beneath him. Margot practically punched the doorbell when they finally reached Xander's front door. They had argued the entire way from the residential center. He had to keep her from giving in, but Kent was worried she might finally snap and turn her fists on him. Xander opened a minute later. Seeing just the pair of them, his face dropped. "What's wrong?" A half hour later, they had argued through an explanation of Emma's reveal, and Kent sat in one of Xander's living room armchairs staring up at a mounted elk's head, while the other two continued the conversation. To their surprise, Xander was not only receptive to the news, but wholeheartedly considering a new mission. "So you're just okay with it?" Margot raised. "I came here for your help, now you're siding with her?" "I'm not siding with her," Xander defended. "I just think a mission like this would help focus our minds on something other than what happened last time." Kent laughed. "You want to distract us from Liz?" he noted. "It's only been 2 months. They haven't even buried her yet." "It's a lot longer than some groups get," Xander replied. "I'm not washing away Liz. I just think for the sanity of all of us, maybe a low-stakes mission might be good for this morale." "So you are agreeing with her," Margot said. "How can you forgive her so easily? You were as pissed as the rest of us. She betrayed your trust." "You're right," he acknowledged. "She did. And she used Kent to do it. But I think she did it because she felt that she had to, and no one convinced her otherwise. She's misguided as all hell, but she's still a part of our squad. You can't seriously be forgiving what she did, Margot raged. Liz's family is going back to trial because of what she did. Do you have any idea what they went through before? Far more than you do, Xander huffed. And I'm not forgiving what she did. I'm forgiving her for a poor decision she felt was necessary. Margot rose to her feet. What the hell happened to you? She shouted. Xander stared at her pensively. Excuse me? The Garens killed your brother, remember? She yelled, pointing to a picture of a teenage boy on one of the fireside shelves. You blamed them for years! How can you suddenly be so on their side about everything? Because I realized I was wrong, Xander growled, growing tired of Margot's accusations. Because I realized how immature it was to hold a grudge like that for so long. Sometimes things just happen, and there really is nobody to point fingers at when things fall apart and people get hurt. Ken thought about the office in China and almost opened his mouth, but stopped himself, seeing how determined Xander was to make them drop the conspiracy. Open your eyes! Margot screamed. Xander, I lived with these people for almost 5 years. I know things. I know what they do. Did you come here to rant about the government, or did you come here to talk about a mission? He interrupted. It's the same thing, Margot stormed. Emma said the news came directly from Shane Daniels. Good, Xander smiled, relieved. Then we know we can trust it. Again, Margot rolled her eyes in disbelief. How can you say that? Xander crossed his legs. If you're referring to the half-witted conspiracy Jordan and Emma have about him, then I'd say that you're the one who needs to open her eyes. They already cleared him in the investigation they opened. In fact, I heard some other people are being investigated about things because Shane came away so clean. He leaned forward. Really, if you two knew half the things Shane has done, you'd never doubt him again, he finished. I would trust him with my life. Kent finally had enough. So what? He perked. You think we should just risk our lives on the off chance Johnny really is down there? I mean, when is this supposed to happen? 3 weeks, Margot frowned. That's what Emma said. Kent looked at Xander incredulously. 3 weeks, he repeated. So in 3 weeks, they expect us to fully commit to a mission and completely prepare for it in the chance that after nearly a month, Johnny might still be in the same place his tracker apparently went haywire? Xander took a deep breath. That makes it sound worse than it actually is, he retorted. None of us speak Spanish either, except Her Majesty, Kent added. Add that to the list of things we need to speedrun. Xander shook his head. Relax. They speak English in Guyana, he relayed. Besides, if it's an abandoned facility like Emma said, the chances of having to engage someone in conversation are slim to none. It sounds to me like this is nothing more than recon scouting, he explained. The company doesn't have enough intel on the location, so they send us to investigate. It's routine. To address your concern about the timeline, yes, in 3 weeks Johnny could be anywhere. But even right now, he could be hundreds of miles away. That time gives us the opportunity to prepare so that when we arrive and find what we're looking for, it can lead us, or someone else in the company, in the right direction as swiftly as possible. When? Margot repeated. You sound like you've already decided. I'm all for it, Xander shrugged. I understand your reluctance, but I think in this situation, the pros far outweigh the cons. We get a chance to redeem ourselves alongside the chance we get Johnny back. I think it's a win-win. We came here for you to talk us out of it, Kent argued. What if it's a trap? What if something goes wrong? Nothing is going to go wrong, Xander calmed. If they deem it safe, then we have nothing to worry about. You guys need to stop thinking what happened in January is all this will ever be. My best friend died because we thought we had nothing to worry about, Kent shouted, rising to his feet. I'm not going to let her brainwash us into following into another trap. Xander shrugged again, amused. Then don't go, he said plainly. If it's not something you want, you don't have to do it. You've already exhausted your quota. This one's optional. Ken felt himself redden. But you just said, I said I'm all for it, Xander echoed. I gave you my reasons. I'll support you one way or another. If that means I walk into the embassy tomorrow and sign for the mission, I'll do it. But it's not up to me. It's up to all 5 of us, and it sounds to me like you two have already made up your minds. Kent shot a harsh look at Margot, who flicked her gaze awkwardly away toward Xander. What? Xander puzzled, noticing. Margot swallowed hard. I'm going to have to sign too, she admitted hollowly. For Jordan. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, Xander instructed carefully. He doesn't get to dictate your decisions. No, she agreed, tears welling in her eyes again. But it's like you said. You're supporting us, I'm supporting him. I know that's what he needs. Kent rolled his eyes as audibly as he could. So that leaves me, he huffed. The only one with the sense to stop it. They both eyed him warily. You two are pathetic, he ended. I'm leaving. He rushed back to the front door, hardly pulling his shoes over his heels before marching outside. See you Monday, Xander dismissed sarcastically. He was halfway down the cul-de-sac before Margot's voice sped behind him. Can't wait, she called, running to meet him. I need you to know that... Suddenly she wobbled over, nearly stumbling onto the grass of a neighboring house. Kent reached out quickly to catch her, holding her shoulders to keep her steady. You're not alone, she tried, gasping for breath. Even though I have to, Sorry. Margot pushed him out of the way as she stepped toward the street and vomited onto the pavement. All he could do was stop her from falling into it. After a pair of unsuccessful repeats, Margot wiped her mouth on the inside of her sweatshirt and stood up as though nothing had happened. I'm fine, she assured, seeing the worried look on Kent's face. Overexertion and nerves. I'm fine. Her eyes were bloodshot, because of which emotion he wasn't sure. I have to sign it, she admitted. I have to. But you need to know I'm on your side. Let me be the villain, he registered. Thanks, Mar, real noble. You're the only one who can be, she extended. Not the villain, the one with the sense and the ability to stand your ground, and if you need me to support you in that decision, I absolutely will. Kent shook his head. Pick a side, he ordered. Stop trying to please everyone. Margot sighed. Kent, Before she could say anything, another wave of sickness threw her onto the street. I'm fine, she argued. It's just nerves. You're not fine, he recognized. Come on, we're getting you home. When they returned to the common room, Jordan was alone on the couch, his eyes closed, hands folded in his lap. Emma was nowhere to be seen. Without a word, Margot grabbed his hand and marched him off to his bedroom. I'm going to sign it, Kent heard him say before the door closed. I'm sorry, I have to. I know, Margot sighed. Me too. That night and the next were plagued by nightmares of Liz, this time joining them on their new mission, only to find herself taken away from them in new, more harrowing circumstances. The second occurred early, leaving Kent shaken and wide awake by 3 o'clock. Unable to close his eyes again, he finally abandoned Johnny's room the way he had intended to for months, making his way to his old room upstairs and curling up under the freezing covers, desperate to cry himself to sleep. After a day hidden away in her room, Margot attempted to join them at school Monday morning. With how purple Kent's eyes must have been, she didn't look any worse, but by lunchtime her body had finally given in to the temperature, and Jordan escorted her back home. Whatever alliance she had intended to support him with was gone, leaving him alone to watch Jordan and Emma silently judge his decision every time his back was turned. This would have been challenging enough, but training time added a completely new layer of pressure. Sitting in their dressing chairs were an official outline of the projected mission, along with a second page already filled out to recognize and accepted, save for a blank pair of lines at the bottom, waiting for their printed names and signatures. Kent initially thought of ripping the page to shreds immediately, but caught Jordan staring again, guilting him into shoving the unsigned page into his backpack. The other two had signed it immediately, leaving no doubt their private conversation Saturday evening had gone exactly as predicted. Xander gave no indication what he had done with his own form, but judging from his lesson plans throughout the remaining week, he was desperate to have something concrete. Without the squad's commitment, there was no reason to practice details of the mission, or even know about its finer content, meaning their time in the training center was restricted to the usual limited team-building exercises and weapons practice that the squad was capable of with only 3 members. Ken could see how desperate the other two were to go after something greater. Xander kept his preferences hidden until Wednesday, when, still out of action, Margot's signed form was sitting on the classroom table facing the door to their dressing room, plain for everyone to see. Guilt wasn't the right word to explain how he felt through the rest of the week. Maybe with Jordan there was some kind of remorse, but with all 4 of the others eyeing him like a hawk, silent with unspoken intentions, there was nothing he wanted more than to run away and hide upstairs every time he entered the common room. Most nights Emma was cooking in the kitchen, her access to the living space no longer inhibited by Margot since she was now confined to her bedroom. Ken successfully avoided her on 2 of these nights, but the others found him stopped in his tracks, her giant blue eyes staring passively, pretending she wasn't desperate to pull him to her side. Even school lunches were awkward. With nothing to talk about and the sound of silence sitting amongst them avoiding the obvious, Kent took to avoiding the other 2 completely, usually making his way to a table of no-names from the tech team in the school's theater program, of which he had reluctantly forced himself to join as part of a dying wish from Liz. He hated every minute of it, but imagined it was better than the alternative. Friday he returned from training completely worn out, excited to finally have at least a day to himself without needing to see the others. Shrugging off the guilty feeling from the week, he stormed up the stairs intent on a night to himself. This time of year, golf was just ramping up, so he shut his door and locked it for good measure, closing himself away from the rest of the world. His excitement froze when he saw his bed. Sitting atop the hastily positioned comforter was a white envelope, his first name scribbled on the back. With a sharp breath, he picked it up, knowing any of the four could have written it, a long-winded plea for him to finally break. The only one with enough pathos to sway him was Jordan, but as he looked at his name, he recognized the unfamiliarity of the handwriting. Unless Emma had written it with her right hand, it was from outside the squad. Cautiously, Kent tore at the letter, half practicing the hazard training they had undergone in the fall. Inside was a single white business card for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the phone numbers of the main office and both minister and deputy minister listed on the front. The backside was devoid of text. Instead, in the same blue ink as his name on the envelope, were 3 words. It's legit. Mike. Kent felt his heart race, knowing what it meant. There were no tangible reasons to keep him from signing on to the mission. Beyond fear for his own life, the only thing keeping him resistant was hatred. He could hear Jordan on his bed below, sobbing. Jordan can't win without me. With a pained sigh, he lay back on his bed and stared at the ceiling for several minutes before committing. This isn't about her, he reminded himself, taking a long drink of water from the tap, then opening the door to head downstairs. Emma was in the kitchen, her hair up in a ratted bun to keep it off her oversized white t-shirt. She was making something southern per usual. A pair of mismatched peppers sat without part of their shells on the counter beside her. Her back was turned, distracted from his arrival by a pair of earbuds playing something Kent was sure he would hate. With a deep sigh, he took a seat on one of the island's bar stools. He knocked on the counter to get her attention. Confused, she turned around, blinking in surprise. She pulled out the earbuds and stuffed them into her waistband. Oh, hi, she said somberly. What do you want? He had hoped for a kinder welcome, but still took another breath and committed to being the bigger person. What are you making? He asked. You'd hate it, she replied. It's not what I asked. Emma turned to the stove. Walleye, she revealed carefully. With mango salsa. She turned her head back to Kent. Her expression was dark. Johnny used to love it, she explained. He never remembered much about Minnesota except the fact that his mom loved making walleye for dinner. It was more a her thing than a him thing. But I added my salsa to it and made it an us thing, you know? Kent bit his cheek to keep himself stoic. With a sad sigh, Emma added, It's the first time I've made it since China. Kent looked over her shoulder at the browning pan. Make me a plate. What? Make me a plate, he repeated. Emma frowned. I don't have enough for both of us, she declined. Too bad, he said. I'm eating with you, so you either make more or we both starve a little. Emma gave him an irritated stare, then turned to the pan and returned a minute later with a small plate covered in a rainbow of food. You too, he ordered, gesturing to the silverware drawer. She reluctantly pulled out another fork and took a cautious bite. What is this? She wondered aloud. Kent shrugged. It's us having dinner together. Don't make it weird, she cringed. Why? Kent looked down at his plate and took a bite. An uncomfortable mix of sweet and spicy met his tongue, and he forced it down quickly. You're right, he admitted. I do hate it. Emma kept her eyes locked on him in a half-frown. I guess I hate a lot of things he loves, he stated plainly. Including you. Her face tightened. Leave me alone. She pulled the plate back and set it on the back counter, keeping herself turned to Kent. No, he chided. You're going to stand there and listen to what I have to say. She slammed her hand against the plate so hard he thought she might have broken it. Spinning on her heels, she growled, Why would I ever do that? Eyes locked on hers, Kent pulled the form from his back pocket and laid it out on the table. The effect was immediate. Her eyes shot to the bottom of the page, where his name and signature had yet to fill the blank space. She froze for a full minute, her chest rising greater and greater as she took in the severity of the moment. Finally, she looked back up, a completely new emotion flashing over her face. Kent felt his heart race. Please, Kent, she begged. Anything within reason, please, just sign it. I don't want anything from you, he lied. A part of the hope in her eyes was clouded with confusion. Then what? You're going to listen to what I have to say, he explained. You're going to take everything I have to give you and then maybe, just maybe, I'll agree to the mission. Emma swallowed hard. All right, she conceded. Immediately, Kent let it all go. You used me, he raged. You took advantage of me in one of the lowest points in my life, and you tried to blame me for when things didn't go your way. Emma bit her lip. From day one, you lied to me, he continued. I don't know if I'm just stupid or ignorant or what, but you let me believe you cared about me. You lied to me about Johnny. You made me feel like a complete imbecile because I let myself believe that if I tried hard enough, maybe I could convince you to feel something too. I put so much hope in you being the solution to all of my problems. Do you know how lonely it is coming from outside the city and trying to fit in with the rest of you? Time after time, Jordan and Liz tried to convince me you weren't worth it, but I was just too caught up in the what if. I don't even know if I really like you. I mean, really, what is there to like about you? Emma's face turned red. You look like a fourth grader. You're not friendly. You're not funny. Every time I'm around you, I feel like I have to perform under some stupid pressure because of who your dad is. Your family's the only reason anyone ever tries to associate with you. And the only reason the other three stick around is because that's all they've ever known here. They don't know anything different. Even when little sparks of goodness pop out in you, it's only ever in pockets where you can get what you want out of other people. You used that against me because you knew you could. Because you knew I was too distracted to think clearly. And why was I distracted? Because someone tried to have me killed and things didn't go according to plan. Liz was smart enough to see it happening, and she put herself in the firing line to save me because she knew someone had to put a stop to all the evil shit going on behind the curtain. Emma's face was still popping like a tomato, but her confusion peaked. Kent, what are you... Her eyebrow curled. I don't know. Yeah, maybe you don't, he agreed honestly. Maybe you're not looking in the right places the way the rest of us are, but I do know this. The people pulling the strings are on your side of things, and I'm powerless to fight against it. I was meant to die in that office. Not Liz. Do you understand me? He growled. Put me in her place. None of this happens. You have no reason to manipulate anyone into doing your dirty work because there's nothing else to cover up. Liz stays alive. No one mourns for me. Life goes on. But here I stand. Evidence of whatever misguided conspiracy screwed the Grand Dukes over and left me to mourn my best friend. Did I throw her under the bus? Absolutely. Am I going to have to live with that for the rest of my life on top of the nightmares? And despite everything your side has been trying to do to put me through this entire year, yes, I am. But once this year's over, I'm done with you. Do you understand that? I'm done. Kent took a hard few breaths, realizing Emma had backed away from her side of the island. He could feel beads of sweat forming on his forehead. I trusted you. Even after all the evidence told me not to, he added. All you do is talk and twist the truth, and I'm so stupid that I couldn't even see how obvious it was when everything you've ever told me is a damn lie. A lie so you could get what you wanted, even when I knew. I knew you were fresh in your feelings about Johnny being gone. I believed everything you said because I can't get over this petty obsession with wanting to win you over for no tangible reason other than my own pride. You told me you liked me, and I actually believed you. Emma's face shrank, closing her eyes and shaking her head. Don't do that, Kent barked, feeling the steam rise off his skin. You're not allowed to do that now. She swallowed hard, acting confused. Do what? He leaned over the table. Play games with me, he ordered. Not right now. Look me in the eyes and tell me I don't have a chance. Her eyes swelled to the size of golf balls. Tears threatening to fall, she shook her head. Tell me I can give up hope, he demanded. Tell me you've never thought about it the way you said you did. Tell me that you and I can never exist. She shook her head again. I can't, she squeaked. I can't tell you that. This time it was Kent's hand to slam on the counter. Screw you, he shouted. Kent, I can't, she sniffled, letting tears fall down her cheeks. I can't lie to you about that. Stretch the truth then the way you always do, he damned. Because I can't keep doing this. I can't keep letting you do this to me. Emma wiped one of her eyes. Kent, You what? He screamed. You like having me around because it makes you feel good, is that it? He threw his hands up in bewilderment. You're keeping me around as a backup plan in case Johnny really is dead. I can't do that, Emma. I have enough self-respect to finally put my foot down. What am I going to have to do, scare you away? Her eyes were fogged over with tears. Maybe you like the insults, he teased. Maybe that's the kind of person you are. Fine. You know the difference between you and me? He stood to his full height, towering above her. A sudden wave of dizziness almost swept him over. You do things because you believe they need to happen. I do things because I want to. She sniffled again, blinking to clear her eyes as she held her breath. Back in China, he explained. You killed because you had to. I killed because it felt good. Emma shook her head, a look of confused disbelief sinking in. I stomped that guard to death, 100%, he admitted cruelly. I did it because I wanted to, and I do it over and over and over again because for once in this godforsaken company, something I was doing felt good. The shaking increased. Kent, stop, she begged. You want me to stop? He shouted emphatically, poised to continue, but a sudden flash of heat under his skin stopped him in his tracks. He gripped the table. Push me away, for good. He steadied himself and returned the intensity to his stare. Your father killed the only person in my life who ever loved me, he claimed. And you made me spit on her grave. He took a shaking breath and let his guard down. The least you can do is kill this part of me. Emma sighed, tears streaming down her face as she looked from Kent to the blank page in front of him. Her chest continued to rise and fall with deepening breaths. Kent, she started, opening her mouth to say something, but stopping before she could go any further. Her eyes dropped to the floor. Let me go, she ordered. I'm not worth it, just... She shook her head again, confused. No, he blared. You don't get to do that. You don't get to dictate terms and act all humble about it, not after everything you've done. Well, what do you want me to do? She cried. Do you have any idea the amount of shame and regret I've had to deal with ever since we left Beijing? Too bad, he nearly vocalized. Justify your actions with whatever confessions you have, he noted. Same old Emma. What do you want me to do? She screamed. Kent smiled, echoing her shaking. I want you to suffer, he admitted. The same as the rest of us have suffered. Emma's expression turned sour. And what, you don't think I have? She questioned. Do you have any idea what's been going through my head in all of this? No, Kent shrugged harshly. And I don't care. She swallowed hard. Fine. If losing my best friend the same as you is that important to you, then just let him die. She reached for the paper, but he snatched it away. A flare of breath shot from Kent's nostrils. Unreal, he criticized. After all of this, you still think this is just between you and I. Another wave of fatigue washed over him as he pulled the pen out of his pocket. Kent, she started, another look of confused concern spreading down from her eyes. Concessions, he added, holding the pen hostage above the page. You face the action. I stay in the van. Emma swallowed again, trying to piece together what he was asking. Okay, she chirped. Jordan and Margot are kept out of danger as much as possible, he continued. You're on the front lines of this mission, and if that means alone, then so be it. The color in her face fled to her cheeks. Okay. And as soon as the semester's over, he concluded, you pull whatever springs you need to send me away as fast as possible. Priority transfer. Your dad and his administration never lay a hand on me or my missions ever again. This one surprised her most of all. Where, she started, but before she could finish, Kent requested, I don't care. As far away from you as possible. Tears still pooled down her bottom eyelids. Emma stared down the page, then back at Kent, followed by a concerned sigh. Deal. He dropped the pen to the paper. Kent, she interrupted. Really, don't do this for me. He smirked, satisfied. I'm not doing this for you, he stated. I would never do anything for you. Not anymore. Emma watched him cautiously as Kent signed his name on the dotted line. I'm doing this for Jordan. As soon as he put the pen down, a fire rose from his chest to his face. He looked up at Emma triumphantly, only to be met by a look of concern. A wave of dizziness almost threw him off his chair. His vision turned white as the heat consumed him. Kent, she said, the voice ringing in his ear. He stumbled off the stool, staring at the grain in the floor, only to find his eyes blurred to everything around him. Emma must have run around to his side. He felt her steady him, then reach a freezing hand to his forehead. Oh, geez, he heard her panic. You're burning up. I'm fine, he mumbled. You're not fine, she argued, pulling him to the couch. You need to lay down. Let me get you some water. He found himself staring at the ceiling, a static buzz giving way to the muffled sound of a faucet running in the distance. Here, she returned, lifting his head to a glass of warm water. Drink this. He tried to argue, but he couldn't find the words. Another wave overcame him, flushing out his senses. Go away, he finally managed. I can take care of myself. I'm not leaving, she burdened, sitting down on the floor beside him. I don't want your help. Emma pulled his face toward her, despite his futile attempts to swat her away. Kent, your fever is well over 100 degrees. If Margot's sick, then so are you. He felt the thick blanket wrap around his arms and legs, pinning him to the couch. He was powerless to stop her. I don't need your help, he mumbled again. Well, too bad, she said. I'm going to whether you like it or not.